Are you looking for your first coat pattern? Well, this could be the one. Hi, my name is Sarah, and welcome to my channel, which is all about sewing and styling a handmade wardrobe. I have a simplicity pattern review for you today, and I've been wanting to do a few more Big Four patterns this year in 2023. My goal is to sew at least one a month. And I don't guarantee that I'm going to review every single one of them in detail, but I did want to do a few more Big Four patterns because I've been seeing some comments lately on Instagram and YouTube that people feel like the indie pattern market is kind of saturated and there's lots and lots of reviews and videos and pictures about those kinds of patterns, but there aren't that many about the Big Four. So today I'm going to be reviewing Simplicity 8797, which is a coat. Now, why did I choose to sew this pattern? I've been wanting to add a really plush teddy coat to my wardrobe for quite a few years now. I've tried some on from ready to wear and I just couldn't find one that I liked and that was a good fit. So I did want to make my own, but I actually had a really hard time sourcing fabric. I have bought that similar sort of faux Sherpa fabric from places like Joann before, but in my experience, those fabrics didn't last very long. In fact, the things that I made out of it didn't last even for a whole season before they got really ratty looking. So eventually I did find this fabric from Minerva, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit later in the review. When I was trying to find a pattern to match the fabric, I wanted to sew an easy lined coat, especially after having so much trouble with the Megan Nielsen Hovia jacket. I wanted to sew another coat to kind of convince myself that I could go through the process and do it successfully. I didn't want to give up on making coats completely. And so because the lines on this coat were really simple, I thought that it would be an easy win. I actually purchased this pattern fairly recently at the end of 2022, but it has been out for a while. It is an older pattern in their collection. Now let's chat about the fabric. The main fabric that I used is from Minerva. It's from their core range Cotton Sherpa Fleece Fur Fabric in Taupe Brown. It's 80% cotton and 20% polyester. It has a little bit of stretch in it, and it is a heavyweight fabric. I bought this fabric last year during one of Minerva's Craft Club sale days. As I said in the beginning, I have been sourcing this type of fabric for quite a while, but I was really looking to find one that was mostly natural fibers as opposed to synthetic because of the issue that I had had previously with the fabric that I got from Joann that was completely synthetic. Because this fabric is mostly cotton, it is quite heavy. It definitely has an interesting texture, but it's not super cuddly like a blanket, and that's okay with me. The main thing that I wanted was something that was going to hold up over time, because if I am sewing a coat out of this fabric, I don't want it to look like trash after just one season. For the lining, I really prioritized using fabric that's already in my stash. So I'll be 100% honest with you, I don't think that my lining choices really are that great of a match for the fabric, but I was just trying to make do with what I had. The primary fabric that I use for the lining is from Rainbow Fabrics. I bought it last year and it's a Viscose Marocain. Now, I bought this fabric intending to make a dress, but when it arrived in the mail, the colors weren't quite what I was expecting, and I didn't really think that it was going to suit me, and so I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do with that fabric, but I did think it would be nice as a lining and be kind of a little fun pop of color without being overwhelming. Now, because this fabric is a little bit textured, it's not really like a crepe, but it's not super smooth. I was just a teeny bit concerned that it wouldn't be the best choice for the sleeves, so I did dig through my remnants and I found a piece of leftover Bemberg rayon from a different project, and I used that for the sleeves so they would be nice and slippery. Again, I don't think the color match is that great for either the lining fabric or the exterior, but the sleeve lining especially is inside of the coat. You're not going to see it when it's worn, so I wasn't super concerned about the color. So how did I find the instructions? So when I was following the instructions, I thought they were pretty easy. I have this habit of starting out in a new project and I follow the instructions very strictly, and as I continue on with the project, I tend to consult the instructions less and less because I kind of get into a zone, and that was the case with this coat as well. At this point, I have made a few lined coats and jackets. At some point, instinct just took over, so I can't really testify to the quality of the instructions towards the end, but in the beginning and when I was looking over them just generally, they seemed fine. I did make a number of changes to the construction. First, I did not interface the undercollar. You're supposed to interface both the upper collar and the undercollar. But because my fabric is so thick and I didn't want the collar to be too stiff, I just went ahead and interfaced the one piece rather than both. This fabric is technically a knit and it has a slight stretch to it, so because of that, I did not need to clip into my seam allowances. When you're attaching the collar to the back neck, it says to cut to the stay stitching and then spread it out in order to get it to fit, to ease into the back of the neckline. But I didn't really need to do that because my fabric was stretchy enough, I could just pull it into place. Now when I did the sleeves for the lining, I actually ended up trimming 1 inch off of the sleeve to make it a little bit shorter. I'm pretty sure the pattern instructions tell you just to cut them the same length as the coat. And I also sewed them by machine. Now, because as I just said, I didn't read the instructions all the way through, I don't know if the pattern tells you to sew them by machine, but I just went ahead and attached them like I would a normal bagged lining. I also completely hand stitched the bottom of the hem. Now I don't know again if the instructions tell you to do that, but I did go ahead and stitch both the outer fabric down with catch stitching, and then I went ahead and slip stitched the lining in place over the hem. And finally, my last change isn't really pertaining to the instructions, but I did have to sew the buttonhole manually because the size of my button was too large to fit into my automatic buttonholer. So I just made the buttonhole by hand by just marking it and doing a zigzag stitch. Now let's talk about what pattern alterations and design changes that I made. So I sewed view B, which is the second longest view. I chose that view because I wanted to maximize the amount of fabric that I had on hand, and that was the longest view that I could fit on my fabric. On me, it comes to slightly below the knee. I would imagine that on a person of a more average height, it might be around knee length. So the only fit alteration that I made was that I shortened the sleeve by 2.5 inches. Now this year, I'm trying my best to be as useful as I possibly can in these reviews. So I'm going to insert a picture of the sleeve pattern piece after alteration so you can see what it looks like. Normally, I would think that everybody knows how to shorten things. Why do I need to show this? But maybe you're new and you've never done it before, so I just wanted to let you see what the pattern piece looks like. So I just simply cut it at the lengthen shorten line, overlapped it 2.5 inches, and taped it down, and then I evened out the side seams. So before I cut my fabric, I just go ahead and measure the trued up seams to make sure that they're the same length so that I know that they'll sew together and that I didn't make a mistake somewhere. And that's really all that I did to change the pattern on this one. As far as design changes, I left off the little belt piece in the back. When I was cutting my fabric out, I was thinking to myself, that piece is just decorative, it's completely useless, what's the point? So I didn't cut it out, but now I'm actually wishing that I had, because I do think that that little decorative touch makes it look more like a coat and a little bit less like a bathrobe, but that's in retrospect. Obviously it doesn't affect the function at all, but I do kind of wish that I had put that on. Also at some point, I think the instructions say that you can top stitch if you want to, but I opted not to do that. Now, would I sew this pattern again, and would I recommend it to others? Yes to both. I think that this coat is a really good option for faux fur because the style lines are so simple. There's not a lot of seaming, there's not a lot of pieces, and you can make it look different with the different lengths. Like, I think that having a shorter faux fur jacket would be beautiful, and I also think alternatively doing the longest length, that's like ankle length, would also be stunning. I also think that you could mix it up a little bit by squaring off the collar. That would give it a different look than having that rounded shape, which to me looks a little bit more vintage. I think this is a really good coat for a beginner who wants to try their first coat because there's not a lot of tailoring techniques, there's not a ton of interfacing, there's no shoulder pads, no sleeve heads, there's only one button that you have to put in, and the coat has inseam pockets, so you don't have to do anything complicated like a welt pocket, but it still looks a little bit nicer to me than like a patch pocket. Now, as far as if I made this again myself, I would make a couple of changes. First of all, I would move up the pocket location by about 1 inch, and that's just because I have T-Rex arms. They're really, really short, and so I find the pocket location to be a little bit low. I did try to test that out before I cut my fabric, but sometimes you just can't really tell until you construct it. So I would go ahead and move up that pocket location just about 1 inch, and I think that it would suit my arms a little bit better. And the other change that I would make is that next time, if I choose to make the longest view, definitely, and if I wanted to make this view again, the midi length, possibly, I would try to add a vent to the back because I think it would just make it a little bit easier to walk. So my final thoughts for this coat. First of all, I think that it looks really good when it's worn open. It also is a little bit easier to move that way. I can wear it closed, but it's a little bit awkward. It doesn't quite look as nice. And when you're walking, especially if you're wearing a skirt or a dress, I don't know, it can be a little bit difficult to move. I do think that it would have benefited from possibly having a vent in the back. So I think the style is really at its best when the coat is worn open. Also, just as a side note, I don't think that my husband likes this coat. I think that he thinks it's slightly embarrassing. I really like it. I think that it is maybe a little bit tacky, but I think it's tacky in a good way. I just really like the texture. I really like how plush it is. I think that it's fun and different, but it's not too crazy. It's not too out there. It's not like a zebra print or something. And I really like the shade of brown. It's sort of a pinky brown, and I just think it's really an unusual color, but it suits so many things that are in my wardrobe. You can wear it with black. I just really like the color of the coat. I do find that now that it is truly winter here, I do need to wear a scarf with this coat because the neckline is very open, and normally I just need something covering up my neck unless I'm wearing like a turtleneck sweater or something. So I do find wearing a scarf is necessary, but that's just the style of this coat. It would be the same for any sort of coat in that style. And lastly, I would say that this coat is not super warm, but it is practical in certain conditions. Living here in Western New York, I have found that it's really important to have a range of different outerwear that fits in different weather conditions and with different outfits. So the thing that's really nice about this coat is although it's not super heavy because I didn't use a really warm lining and the fabric is primarily cotton, it's not the kind of coat that I can wear with just like a t-shirt underneath. However, because the fit of the coat is so oversized, I can easily put really bulky layers underneath, so I can wear it with a really chunky sweater that's already warm on its own. And with the size of the coat, it fits perfectly over that sweater, and it's very, very comfortable even when it's cold. Contrasting that with if I wore the same chunky sweater underneath a puffer coat, I would be sweating to death because that combination of the really warm sweater underneath a really warm coat is just too much. For styling, I chose to do two different looks for you today. The first one is I wanted to dress it up and look really glam, so I put it on with my One Puddle Lane Miss Ruby Tuesday dress that I am wearing today and some boots, and I just feel party ready in this. I think that it's holiday appropriate. It's just a really fun coat to me. It's not over the top luxury or anything. It just adds a little bit of texture and a little bit of different style than what I normally wear. For my second look, I wanted to go a little bit more casual and laid back for every day. So I'm wearing it with a beanie and my beautiful white cabled sweater that I knit. I have on my black linen shirt underneath, and then I'm just wearing it with some ready-to-wear black skinny jeans, and then I threw on my Veja sneaker. I absolutely would wear this look in my everyday life. I would even wear it to work. I just think that the fun texture of the coat adds a little bit of a different touch to a normal everyday sort of outfit that I would wear all the time. And I really am going to enjoy styling the coat in different ways as I wear it more. If you would like to see some other coats and jackets that I've made recently, check out this video next.